Hello folks, today I'm in Lanark. The town of Lanark has always held great curiosity for me. Now it's not a Bruce site, but it is a site associated with a man who Bruce would have been very familiar with, and that man is none other than William Wallace. I'm here in the church of St Kentigern. Now, history has it that Wallace met his sweetheart Marion Braidfute here. And this is where all the trouble began. So when you think back to that time where Lanark was occupied by English forces, there was a garrison here down at Castlegate Park, further down in the town. And you have all these youngsters, and you have such a young upstart in the guise of William Wallace and his friends. This is St Kentigern. This is where it's rumoured that Wallace met and fell in love with Marion Braidfute. Now, rumour has it that Heselrig, the sheriff of Lanark, Edward the first sheriff, was sweet on Marion Braidfute. And Wallace met Marion here. They would have come here to worship. They would have walked through these very arches that I'm walking among right now. And Wallace left worship one morning and he was being taunted by the English soldiers about his sweetheart. Further down in the town, a fight ensued between him and the soldiers. Some were left dead, and as the soldiers searched for Wallace, they went into the Braidfute home, and it's there that they killed Marion. Whether the sheriff of Lanark, Heselrig, killed her himself, we don't know, but she was certainly murdered, and Wallace became incensed by this. So he invaded Lanark at night with a group of friends. They managed to get into the castle at Castlegate, where the modern bowling club now stands, and it's there that he murdered the sheriff of Lanark. It's said that he cleft him from head right down to the neck, and so started the outlaw career of William Wallace. But this is a fantastic place to really take in. They would have sat in here, they would have made eyes at each other, they would have spoken, they would have walked through these very arches, and it's here that they fell in love. But it's also here that the name William Wallace as an outlaw started to come forth, and his name came throughout the land. I wouldn't say that it's the blow. I don't think he struck the blow in the name of Scottish independence. I think it was a personal situation, but it certainly led to the revolt against Edward's occupation of Scotland. But it's an extremely historic place now. It's in a ruinous state. It's dilapidated, and there's quite a bit of mess around it when you walk amongst the tombstones. But the history of William Wallace is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating when you trace his footsteps through Lanark. You can go and visit the site of the Braidfute home, where Wallace is said to have escaped through the back as the English soldiers were coming. And because Marion was trying to protect him at the time, she was only a young woman, they murdered her there. And he went to hide off down near the River Clyde in the forest, in the caves that are around there. So thus, Scotland came into an insurrection against the English, and it wasn't long before the English got to hear about it. And of course, Wallace went on to face the English in battle at Stirling Bridge, which he won the battle. And he went on to lose at Falkirk, which was his undoing, until eventually his capture by the English and taken to London, where he was brutally executed at Smithfield in London. But such a fabulous place to visit, really, really steeped in history. You get a real sense of place when you come here. But It's a place Wallace would have been extremely familiar with, coming here to worship. And when you think about Lanark back in those days, when you think about young people walking around the streets of Lanark with English soldiers in occupation, no one likes an invader, and the English would not have been looked on very favourably by the locals, and certainly the Braidfutes were a well-respected family of the area. That murder would have caused a lot of tension at the time. When I think about William Wallace, I think about a really sad life where he's on the run a lot of the time. The nobles of Scotland don't like him. They don't want him to be part of the politics of Scotland or to play any role in it at all. He's looked on as beneath them in all those, in all the political happenings in Scotland at the time. But eventually they were going to betray him. They betrayed him at Falkirk. They betrayed him ultimately with his life, because that was the price of Edward's peace, coming back into Edward's peace, that no peace was to be given to William Wallace and that he was to be delivered up. So such a turbulent young life. He's the Scottish national hero, and he's the symbol of the freedom fighter. But to go into a reality about the man, it must have been a life that once he committed to, he could never go back on. As much as he tried, the politics of the day were against him, and eventually it would cost him his life. But going back to his pre-rebel days when he met Marion here, where they had a close relationship, where he enjoyed the town of Lanark and its people, they were the last days of freedom that he would ever know.